Aloha, my name is Matt. I'm a photographer living in Hawaii, and in this video, we're going to take a look at Sony's 200-600mm f5.6 to 6.3 lens, and I'm going to go over some reasons why I am still using this lens going into the year 2025. I think overall this is an outstanding lens for the price, and the quality of images that you are able to get is still outstanding. Quick general overview about this lens is it's about 4.5 inches tall with about 13 inches long without the lens hood. Obviously the lens hood does add a little bit more length and a really tiny amount more weight to the lens, but this is really considered to be a lightweight lens weighing approximately 5 pounds, and it fits into pretty much any camera bag I've ever owned, whether it be a carrier bag or whether it be if I'm walking around with it super light to handle, or just a regular backpack. The filter, if you are into filters for whatever reason, it is a 95mm thread, so you will expect to spend a little bit more on the filters for this particular lens. The 200-600 is also compatible with the 1.4 or the 2x teleconverter. I say general use for this lens can really be whatever the heck you want to use it for. Whatever I can shoot with a telephoto lens is what I'm going to shoot. So I've shot action, wildlife, landscape, lifestyles, portraits, astrophotography. Astrophotography, I guess I more so consider moon-related photos more than anything else, but we'll take a look into some of those examples here momentarily. Really cool, nice feature about this lens that you will see is that there's different modes. And most of the Sony lenses that I'm aware of have these types of modes, but for this being what some people refer to as a quote-unquote budget lens, you still do have the modes. The modes are really important to understand when to use them. So each mode basically is communicating with your lens and your camera body that, hey, this is what I am expecting. So mode number 1, mode number 2, and mode 3. Mode 3 is going to be used for any erratic moving subjects, such as this surfer here. Also, one quick little thing too is I forgot to mention that I do put the settings. I know everyone is just so obsessed with settings. So just keep in mind that just because I'm using this setting that you see here in this photo, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to work for you. So I just get tired of getting messages and comments about settings. So whatever. You got to figure out your own settings for what you're doing, and that comes through practice. It doesn't come through watching a YouTube video and someone saying, use this setting and it's good for everything, because that's simply not the case. Mode number 2 will be reserved for panning. So this is going to be if you're shooting subjects that are going from left to right or right to left. I'm not saying that you can't use mode 2 or mode 1 for any erratic moving subjects, but this is what Sony recommends that you use these modes for. I take that as a suggestion from them, that that's what they're recommending. I understand that maybe you don't know what you're shooting or action's really unexpected. I get that, I understand, but if you are shooting birds, for example, or wildlife, anticipate their movement to be erratic, and mode number 3 would probably be the best option for you. Mode number 1 is really going to be reserved for more like lifestyle, more still photos, rather than necessarily anything that's moving super fast. I consider this to be more of a lifestyle shot with this young man right here getting ready to head in to catch some waves on the North Shore. I did dial it over into mode number 1 instead of mode number 2 or 3, which is what I'm commonly doing in a lot of my surf photography. If you're not familiar with my work, I do tend to do a lot of surf and surf-related photography. Living in Hawaii, we do spend a lot of time in and around the water, so that's really kind of why you see a lot of photos like that. But you can apply these bits and pieces of information to your own photography. So whether that is a wildlife or whether it's some type of action or other type of sports, still applies mode number 1, mode number 2, mode number 3 to your photography. Let's take a look now. I guess just at lower lighting performance. So while this does not really look like a lower lighting performance, if you saw the raw photo for this, it was actually really dark. I think this is a pretty cool photo just of Emio during the wintertime at Rocky Point. It's one of my favorite places to shoot. I love being really close to the action. The waves get pretty wild here sometimes, so it's really fun to shoot. And when you are shooting ultra high performance surfers that are professionals, meaning they're like actually professionals, not claiming to be professionals, it's really fun to shoot people like this because they can actually surf and ride waves, and they can actually perform really well even if the waves are not necessarily the best. So lower lighting performance on this lens is amazing. I know and understand that a lot of the camera bodies play a factor in lower lighting performance, of course. This is a disadvantage to this lens, is that it's kind of slow in the terms of lenses. So when you're shooting at 5.6 or 6.3, that's great. My other lenses that I use, like the 70-200 is a 2.8. I have the 300 2.8, and I have the 400 2.8. So there's a significant advantage to shooting lower lighting at more open apertures, but that's not necessarily what this video is about. I wanted to highlight some of the photos that you can get using this lens. I've heard time and time again that this is a budget lens. It's a budget lens. It's not the G Master lens. Okay, that's nice that you think that, but this lens should not be discarded as a non-professional lens. I've sold many, many, many photos to companies using this lens, and I don't see any reason why you cannot as well. So if you're just getting into photography or maybe kind of venturing over into the sports action, this is an amazing lens for you. I think you'll see that throughout the examples that we're taking a look at. So Sony also offers a 100-400mm lens. This is, for me, not an option. I do not like the extension tube, as you can see here in this image here. It is just way too risky for me. I'm a kind of a high-risk shooter. I am not afraid to get down into the dirt. I'm not afraid to get down into the sand. I'm constantly outside near the ocean, the spray. There's just too much of a risk for me personally. That's just my personal opinion, that I'm going to get dirt, dust, debris, or any type of weather inside of the lens. These lenses are not waterproof, so you can't just run into the water and expect it to be water sealed. It's not the way that this works, but I have been out in the rain before, for sure. You get really screwed when the weather comes in and it just totally unexpected and starts raining. I just cover up the lens. I think the major issue is not necessarily the glass in the front. It's more so the connector in the rear, which goes to your camera, that you do need to protect mostly. So got to be prepared. One amazing thing about this lens is its really quick ability to range from 200 to 600. It's literally just a quarter of a turn. It's so smooth and so easy to do. I never have problems jamming or it giving me issues or grinding or anything like that to get from 200 to 600 or anywhere in between, from 400 to 600, 400 to 200, wherever I need to go. I don't have a problem using that. Next, let's talk about some higher performance shots. So I am a firm believer in using the slowest shutter speed that you can to still get shots. That's not true in certain situations, especially when you're shooting something ultra fast, or if you just want to stick at a specific aperture. Sometimes you just have to raise your shutter speed. I don't really shoot a ton in priority modes. I prefer full control over what it is that I'm shooting. There's just certain situations that come up. The lighting was really spectacular this day. I was just using my A9, and I'm using the 200 to 600 millimeter lens, and it's a Sony A9 Mark 1. So the technology is old, quote unquote. I understand that there's newer camera bodies out there. I get it. I am not a camera body junkie personally. I am a lens junkie. I believe in good glass, gets good results. And I'll state that again, that I firmly believe that this lens should not be disregarded as a non-professional photographer lens. I think this is a spectacular quality lens. The tracking on this, these are all like simulated, so these are not. It's hard. It's really hard to screen record while you're shooting. It's like if you have the Ninja 5 or whatever it is attached to your camera and you're schlepping that around and then you're trying to get content. I don't care enough about getting this crazy content for YouTube and things like that. I firmly believe that people that take the time to listen to and that are not obsessed with people that have a big fancy studio acting like they are knowing what they're doing and they don't have any examples of their work, it just boggles my mind. But what do I know? I just take photos and here I am talking to you. So I think it's really important to listen to people, listen to bits and pieces of what they have to say, and you have to maybe you'll only get a little bit out of this video, but I'm hoping that you'll understand that the most important thing that I'll probably say in this whole entire video that you've heard already 5 times is that this lens should not be disregarded as a high performance or professional photographer lens. This is a really great lens for the price. Overall, I think it's one of Sony's first super telephoto lenses that they launched out with, that are for the alpha bodies. I believe I could be mistaken with the E-mount. Sorry, it should be the E-mount lenses. Anyways, so tracking performance on this with a A9 Mark 1 and using the 200-600mm lens, I was able to track Makana, who is in this photo, perfectly. There was no problems whatsoever grabbing onto him. Good light makes it a lot easier to focus, so I understand that situations come up where you might be in a dark forest or somewhere that's just the lighting is crappy. That's the downside of this lens again, is that you are not able to shoot much more open than 6.3 or 5.6 depending on what millimeter you're at. You can expect though for your camera to work really well with the lens and to still track and still get good photos. It's the end of 2024 when I'm recording this video. Going into 2025, I know that there's amazing camera bodies out. There's the A1 that's out there. There's the A9 III, which is a spectacular sports photography lens. There's the 5 version. There's the 4 version. There's just all of these cameras that have all of these insane sensors. That's great. I'm still banging away here with my A7 III and my A9 and still to this day selling high quality photos to people, to companies, and I'm creating partnerships with major corporations that continuously want me to shoot for them, and I'm using this older technology still. At some point I will probably upgrade perhaps to the A9, but that's not the point of this video. We'll save that for another video. Next, let's look at the focus limiter. This is a pretty basic function of a lens. Whether you are looking to get, well, I think we need to back up a little bit here as well too. So plane of focus is a whole, and depth of field, that's a whole different topic. So you can, whatever you got to do to get your photo. So when you're shooting ultra telephoto images, you're going to expect there to be a pretty decent blowout of your background, like the bokeh. So those are all trees and they're not that far away. But since my subject is so small and since I've got a decent amount of distance still between the trees and the bird here, it's going to create that effect. Same thing with your focus limiter. You're basically either full, which means, hey, I'm hoping almost everything is going to be in focus from where I'm at to my subject. When you're shooting super telephoto, again, that's not always going to happen. So you're going to need to really crank up your f-stop, probably use a tripod, probably use slower, really slow shutter speeds. The problem is, it's just like when you're looking through binoculars. If you want to see something closer to you, but you're looking at a subject way out there, you're just simply not going to see it in your viewfinder. So same thing here. The point of this slide is just to show the bokeh, the focus limiter, and how you can create that figure ground separation, which is what it's doing here. This bird isn't even moving. I'm sorry. I'm not really like a wildlife photographer, but I'm just walking the dog. I just dinking around with the camera, saw the bird, took the photo, and life goes on. Here's another image that I took of this bird. It's just cruising on the branches here, but maybe if there's a little bit more action, that would be cool in this photo. Again, I'm not really a big birder or anything, but I do like challenging myself to try to take photos of new things. So just the background just completely obliterated on this, which is great. It helps your subject stand out a little bit more. So I shot this handheld at a 60th of a second, which is pretty risky. Birds are obviously, especially these little guys, are just bouncing all over the place, and it does make it really hard to photograph. I think the point of this was just to really show that you can create beautiful images using this lens, good quality results, usable photos for your social media, or perhaps, I don't think anyone would necessarily buy this as a print, but maybe, I don't know. I like the range of this lens. I like the ability to zoom in and zoom out really quickly. This is particular shore break. It's one of the most dangerous shore breaks in the world at Keiki Beach on the North Shore, and this guy is just going to town here taking these incredible water photos. I wanted to bump up my aperture a little bit on this photo just because I want a little bit more detail in the wave. So as you can see here, all of those are insanely sharp. My subject is insanely sharp, and then I have a nice kind of blurred out foreground right here, which is great. I took this photo on my A7 III. Burst photos, again, it kind of goes back to this photo that we were talking about here. Just as far as laser tracking, I think I took a total of like 26 or so photos here in this burst on my A9. It's 20 frames a second camera body. It's somewhere in the 20s. I don't remember exactly how many images I took, but so with the A9 using this, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but this day I just threw the ND filter on, and I was just quite honestly just playing around with it. I wasn't really expecting the action to be quite this good, but Baron was out surfing, took some really cool photos of him this day, and I just threw the ND filter on and just wanted to see what it was doing. I mean, it kind of did add this like tint to the photo. I mean, I did post-process these a little bit, not a ton, but at 2,000ths of a second, Baron was laser focused, and every single image or every single frame that I took was overall really happy with this. Pretty erratic to shoot a surfer that's ultra high performance and a true professional. So I was using my mode 3 for sure that we talked about earlier. Going through some of the lower lighting performance again. I know I touched on that a little bit, but obviously this photo was edited, and I edited it specifically just so you can see that you can still produce amazing quality images using this lens. So this was at backdoor. This guy is surfing down the wave here, and the lighting, it doesn't look like it just because of the way I edited the photo, but it was pretty low light. Like the sun, if you're familiar with this location, is actually off to the left, and it was setting, and if my memory serves me correctly, I believe it was just about down, and it was one of those weird days where there was kind of a lot of clouds, so it's kind of blocking some of the light. But just bump up the old ISO just a tiny bit, lower the shutter speed, shoot it, and overall spectacular photo. I like it. Shooting this lens at lower shutter speeds can be a little bit of a challenge just due to the size. It is not a heavy lens. I know some people say, oh, it's 5 pounds, it's so heavy. Well, yeah, that's because you're used to shooting a 24-70 or a 50 millimeter prime lens. Well, it's like, no kidding, it's heavier than that. So I think that's a lot of the comments I see. I like to peruse around in some of these videos, and it's kind of comical to read the comments when people talk about the weight. So my 400 millimeter is heavier than this. I believe it's a pound heavier. It gets heavy. And when I'm 400 millimeter f2.8 is not a light lens by any means, but in my opinion, if you're schlepping around a tripod the whole time, you're not able to get photos like this. You're just not able to get down really quick. You know, it's like you got to dilly and dally and unscrew it and then get down and screw it back in, and or a monopod as well. It's too hard for me personally. I'm sure there's other photographers out there that can handle it and do that. That's great. I personally can't really do it. I want the ability to duck behind a bush a little bit and take a photo of something, or I want to be able to get low or stand up, or if I got to quickly, this happens to me a lot when a really big set is coming in, especially on the North Shore, you got to back up. You're going to get wiped out for sure. So it's like, you got to just schlepping around the extra stuff is just too hard for me. It is taxing and tolling for sure, but laser focus image here on, I mean, this is 100th of a second at 600 millimeters handheld. It's tough to do. I'm not saying that every single one of your photos is going to look like this, because I can certainly assure you I have missed many, many, many photos because I'm doing risky shooting, and risky shooting meaning like super slow shutter speeds handheld. Even this photo here, it's a little out of focus on the subject. I just about missed this one too. I was kind of hiding behind the rocks at Rocky Point here. Saw this like perfect little tube coming down the way, and this guy just came right through, and I just started blasting. When I'm shooting at lower shutter speed, so you can see this one here is at 1/60th of a second, 550 millimeter, or probably somewhere right around there. Sorry, I always round up. It just makes it easier. I have to raise up my f-stop. That's going to help with my focus a little bit too, but also I need to control the light. It's really letting in a lot of light at a 60th of a second, especially when it's daylight outside. So you have to compensate somehow, and I had to do that with my aperture, and I didn't have any filters on or anything in this particular case. So let's now talk about using crop sensor mode. I get some questions about this, the APS-C mode. In this particular photo, Jojo, great photo. I love beautiful wave. I love this photo. He loved it as well too. When you need that little extra reach, most of the modern day Sony cameras allow you to go into toggle between crop sensor and full frame. When possible, I think it's amazing to shoot full frame. You can crop in accordingly, but I just wanted the reach. I just wanted the reach on this one, and it was just a lot easier to do. It's still an amazing photo. It doesn't matter if it was in crop sensor mode or not. This is a very usable image still, even in crop sensor mode. It was a beautiful day. I mean, I got tons of photos like this day, and it was incredible. So if you need that little extra reach, unless you're in a contracted gig and you're required to shoot in full frame or something in crop or what, I don't know. I find that hard to believe that someone would put that in a contract, but maybe. I don't know your situation, but you can get the extra reach using APS-C mode. 1/1250th of a second is, I want to call it kind of my safe zone, especially when you're shooting ultra telephoto. So you got to bump it up a bit unless you're using a tripod. That's just kind of the way it goes. So another option here is with the focal length. If you really, really, really want that extra reach, throw on a teleconverter. The problem with the teleconverters is it changes your minimum aperture as well too. So if you are using a doubler, it's also going to double your aperture to the nearest aperture that it will go. So just because you're using a 2x teleconverter doesn't mean that the focal length is the only thing that's affected. Your aperture is going to be affected as well. For this particular photo, this was kind of a pre-planned photo. It took a lot of energy to make sure I could get this photo. It's my friend owns this helicopter. It was a supermoon. I wanted this photo, and he had a student that needed some night flying experience, and he needed to go over some various commands and training and what have you not. So it worked out well when the phone rings and he says, "Hey, let's try to get this shot." No problem. I will gladly stop everything that I'm doing to get a photo like this. For this photo, really wanted to be in as close as possible. I had the technology, so I had the 2x converter, I had my A7 III with me, and I had my 200-600 lens at the time. This is when I first kind of started getting into telephoto photography. I was doing a lot of astrophotography with my 24mm G Master lens. It was great, but I have this lens, and why not use it? So I did use this on a tripod. If you're shooting the moon, it is a little difficult when you're ultra zoomed in. So I was shooting at 1800mm equivalent. The moon through your viewfinder is rising, and it rises pretty quick through the frame at 1800mm. So I did want to use a tripod. I kind of had the crane mount on there, and that's my setup for this one. So cool. I shoot a lot of moon. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with the damn moon, but I love it. I love taking photos of the moon. I think it's a really fascinating object. For whatever reason, I still to this day don't know. I'm just fascinated by it. So I like taking photos of the moon. You can still get amazing quality images on older technology. Well, I guess older and newer technology. You can get great photos no matter what you have. The best camera to use is the one that you have. Stop worrying about buying the new A7 IV or the A7 V or whatever all the vloggers and all of these people are using. You don't necessarily need that. That does come in handy, I will say. If you have a little bit more pixel wiggle room, it's great. That's amazing. It's really helpful to have, and I'm not saying don't get those camera bodies, but you can still get great quality photos with the gear that you have. If you're looking to upgrade your gear, I would suggest upgrading your lenses before you upgrade your camera. The only tricky part is if you're using, I think it was the A mount was before. If you still have an A mount, I would highly suggest upgrading to an E mount, because those are what Sony's, obviously all of their newer glass is going to be an E mount lens. The bokeh. I understand that this is not an f2.8 G Master lens, and I don't care. When you are in a position where you can get beautiful figure subject background separation, the bokeh looks really nice. I mean, the trees are just nicely, in my opinion, properly blown out. I mean, I do love a good blurry background, but it's not going to be the same situation as this photo of the bird. These trees are so far away versus the trees here are really close, so you can see the difference in the background, specifically here in the trees and the branches, compared to this photo here. There's a little bit more definition, so just do a little bit of homework and understand how to create different effects in your photos. I didn't have a choice here. I am stationary taking photos of this super low. That's what's in the background. I can't really go, let me maybe change this real quick while the action is happening to figure out my composition. Sometimes, guys, photos happen on accident, and just whatever settings you have on is just what you gotta do. It's just as part of photography. I wish I could make these insane compositions and plan it all out. The reality is not every single photo is ultra planned out. Sometimes they're just accidents. This lens is great for lifestyle photography. This is such a simple photo, He's just looking at me dead on. He's clearly aware that there's a camera there. Do I think this is an award-winning photo? No. Do I claim it? No. Do I care? No. It's just a photo that I took at the beach. There's a lot of pros here in the wintertime heading out into the water, and it's just a photo. That's all it is. You are capable of getting outstanding quality photos with this lens. Another lifestyle shot. Even when I'm shooting at f8, there's still a nice separation. It's a nice feel when you're using a 200 to 600 millimeter lens, and that's why I really like shooting with them. It doesn't matter if it's my 135 G Master, my 70 to 200 G Master, a 400 millimeter G Master, a 300 millimeter G Master. It doesn't matter. Use what you got. Use what you have and figure out what your style is, and then start upgrading your lens collection accordingly. This is a fantastic place to start for telephoto lenses. These next few photos are taken at Jaws, so I call them seascapes. I'm flying in a helicopter with no doors, dangling outside at 1,000 feet above. Even at 1,000 feet above, you can still feel the power of this wave. It is just, I can't even describe what it's like. When you're standing on the cliff, you get some spectacular vantage points and viewpoints, and you can feel the rumble when this wave breaks. I mean, it is just so much water crashing. But flying from above and taking these seascape photos, I don't think there's anything that compares to it. People tell me all the time that, oh, you should just get a drone. Well, guess what? I have a drone. I have 2 drones. And there's nothing that compares to the feeling of this. Just being able to just be so humbled and free. Like you're just flying around in this helicopter taking these photos, and using this lens, I'm able to zoom in and just the detail. I love, I remember I was flying with Mike Kuntz from Kauai. He's an amazing photographer. I mean, just incredible. You look at his work. I was flying with him and we were like, hey, let's go check out the back of the wave. Let's go see what's hiding behind the wave and see what details are lurking. This is straight down. I mean, we're just shooting straight down on these waves, and it's just incredible. And you get powerful photos like this. It may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but there are some of the best surfers in the world sitting in this image here. Big wave surfers. These guys are the real deal. They risk their lives to be at this wave. And it's just incredible. I remember I shared this photo, and I was getting all of these messages. Like Kai Lenny messaged me and was just like, dude, this photo's insane. All of these people are just so in love with this shot because it's just so powerful to see so many amazing, talented people all in one spot. So don't ever think that you always have to shoot wide. And that's kind of the point of sharing these last few photos of the waves, is just because you think you should be shooting wide, you don't know what you're going to be shooting tight if you don't have the ability to do so. I think that's what a big difference in my photography is I use a lot of telephoto lenses to shoot. I'm really unconventional. I just did a headshot, or it was like a senior portrait or what have you not. I did it with a 400 millimeter lens. Like, who on earth is taking photos with the 400 millimeter lens? Sure, there's some disadvantages to it, but don't limit yourself. Push yourself. Try new things. Explore around more. So there's a few main reasons why I use this lens. First of all, I love it. I love this lens. It shouldn't be disregarded, again, as a non-professional lens. I guess I used to, I made this slideshow kind of a while back. And now that I have spent some time thinking about this, and, I typed this a while ago, and I put in here, my opinion is that this is an intermediate lens. I guess that doesn't really matter. If you're just getting into photography, get it. You should buy this lens for sure. If you're a pro photographer and you need that little extra reach, but maybe are not convinced that you want to spend $14,000 on the 600mm f4 lens, this is a great option. I think this is an incredible lens. It's a great value. I can trust this lens to get photos that I need. I also understand that there are limitations to this lens, to that lens, to the one over there, to the new one that they're bringing out. There's advantages and disadvantages to every single lens out there. Some people swear that this is the worst lens available and you can't get any. I've heard this one too where they say, I can't get any sharp photos unless I'm at f8. I'm not sure how to respond to that. Maybe you just don't know what you're doing. I don't know. All of these images, almost all of these images have been taken at lower apertures, so at 6.3. I don't really shoot a lot at 200 millimeters with this lens. I think if I wanted that, I would just use my 70 to 200. To me, Sony built this lens to be used at super telephoto lengths, and I think that's what it's designed to use for. I would find it very hard to believe that Sony designed this lens not sharp at 6.3 or 5.6. Can you imagine the backlash that they would receive if somebody knew that they specifically designed this lens to not be sharp at 6.3? Because that's, most people are going to be shooting, more than 300. I think it's 300 millimeters zoom, switches over from 5.6 to 6.3. So there's 300 millimeter, 400 millimeter, 500 and 600 millimeter that they're not going to make sharp. I would find that really hard to believe. So I've easily taken, I would probably at this point, more than 250,000 photos using this lens. I've owned it now for years. I've actually owned 2 of these lenses. They're phenomenal, phenomenal lenses. Lately, I've been really obsessed using the 300 millimeter 2.8 lens. It's a fairly new release. It came out in, I believe, February or March of 2024. It's kind of a whole nother topic that we would have to get into of why I would use a 300 millimeter versus the 200-600, but I guess lightly put, it's really the aperture. The 300 millimeter I can shoot at 2.8 versus this lens, I'm going to be at 5.6 or 6.3 depending on the exact millimeter that I'm at. So this lens is by far the best value lens, in my opinion, in Sony's collection. I have used this lens in full frame mode. I've used this in crop sensor mode. I've used all different types of camera bodies. A9, A1, the A7 III, the 4, the 5. Don't worry about the camera body. If you need the reach, get the reach through the lens. Unless you already have an ultra rich megapixel camera body like an A1 or whatever camera body you have that has a ton of megapixels, that's great. Most of my cameras, I'm shooting 24 megapixels, and I believe I didn't include any photos in here that I took on my A7C II. It's a phenomenal camera. I have used it quite a bit with my 400 and my 300 millimeter lenses, but if you need a little extra reach and are looking to not completely go ham on the cost, this lens is coming in at $2,000, and it's a great value. So hopefully some of this information is helpful to you. I wish I could go over every single aspect of every single type of photography out there that you can use this lens for, but most important message is this is a great quality lens. I do feel strongly that you can get amazing quality images using this lens, and I hope I've been somewhat of a help. We'll see you later. Aloha.